देख रहा है छोटे, मेरा कारोबार।
हाँ।
देखो, आज मेरे पास हिसाब रखने के लिए सैकड़ों रजिस्टर हैं। उन रजिस्टर को भरने के लिए पीसीओ लोग हैं। उन लोगों को सैलरी देने के लिए 3-3 अकाउंटेंट हैं। क्या है तुम्हारे पास?
मेरे पास पगार बुक है।
हाय, जब पगार बुक है तो स्टाफ का हिसाब रखने के लिए इतनी मेहनत क्यों करना? रोज की अटेंडेंस, एडवांस की एंट्री और सैलरी का पेमेंट रजिस्टर की बजाय अब सब होगा पगार बुक पे। फ्री डाउनलोड करें प्ले स्टोर से।
पिछले महीने से तो ज्यादा दिन आए इस बार, फिर भी पगार कम क्यों मिली?
नहीं मैं
क्या सेठ, एक हफ्ता मेरे को बुखार रहा, फिर 2 हफ्ता जॉन्डिस रहा, उसका भी आप पैसा काट लोगे क्या?
अरे भाई
साहब, वैलेंटाइन डे के दिन तो छुट्टी होता है क्या?
मैं क्या बता रहा हूँ, ये देखो।
मैं तो रोज आ रहा हूँ साहब, बस आज नहीं आया तो इसके चक्कर में पगार थोड़ी कटनी चाहिए साहब।
अरे भाई सुनो, मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ, इधर देखो ना। अरे इसको हाथ मत लगाओ तुम। अरे क्या बात कर रहे हो यार तुम? रखो यार तुम। अरे नहीं ऐसा थोड़ी ना, ये भी मत लेके जाओ।
ओ भाई साहब, क्या आपके लिए हर महीने की आखिरी तारीख इतनी ही दर्दनाक होती है? तो पगार बुक चलाइए ना। पगार बुक पे रखिए अपने कर्मचारियों के अटेंडेंस, सैलरी, उधार, बोनस और टाइमिंग का हिसाब। साथ ही ये सारी डिटेल्स भेज सकते हैं अपने एम्प्लॉयज को मैसेज पे, ताकि महीने के आखिरी दिन हो नो चेक चेक। पगार बुक, हर बिजनेस का भरोसेमंद साथी।
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this edition of our webinar series at PagarBook. In this series, we cover essential features which our prospective users or existing users have requested to understand in further depth. For this edition, we'll be covering how to use shifts on the PagarBook platform. As I understand from the registration form that people have joined from different backgrounds. So some of you are entrepreneurs, some of you are HR professionals, and some of you are office admins. So I will start with few basic terminologies which some of you might be already aware of, but this is just to get everyone on the same page and get started. So as you would understand that for any attendance system, even if you are using a pen and paper to note down the attendance timing of any staff, there would be certain terminologies associated with it. To start with, you would probably note when an employee has punched in, and this has a couple of consequences. So if there is an early entry or there is a late entry, you would probably make a note of it. Then you would also have certain policies around when people go on a break. So you would note down if somebody has gone for a break and when that person ends the break. This obviously would have some kind of a policy around how long is your break hours, and if somebody exceeds those designated break hours, what are the consequences? And last but not the least, at the end of the day, you would definitely make a note of when somebody punches out, just to understand that if the employee has left early or late, which again can have consequences like fines or overtime. As you would understand that these terms which are marked in bold, right, they need a reference point for any software system to work. So we need to understand when does a shift start in your organization, when does the shift end, what is the break period, and so on, right? So for us, there needs to be some reference point. The associated terms need some sort of a policy around it. So for example, let's take the example of a punch out, right? So if somebody exits early and let's say there is a grace period of 15 minutes and somebody leaves, let's say around 10 minutes before the end of the shift, right? So would you fine them or would you not fine them? If somebody works for longer hours would you pay them overtime or not, and so on. So these, like I said, need some sort of a definition of your business policy, right? Now we will see how it is configured in our system, but before that we'll just go through the type of shifts that we covered as part of PagarBook platform. So we have three types of shifts, right? The first one is a basic one. It's a fixed shift where you have an explicit in and out time with certain designated break hours, and a particular employee is mapped to only one shift. So it would look something like this. So in a 24-hour window, you have a start time, you have an end time. The length of this bar is like the length of the shift. You would have some designated break hours. Everybody is mapped to this shift, and so on. Next is rotational shift. It's very similar to fixed shift, just that there could be multiple shifts in a day, right? And an employee can work in either, let's say, the first shift or the second shift or both shift, and so on, right? So one day somebody might be working in as a part of this shift, next day they might be working in that shift, and so on, right? The third is something called an open shift, where basically you don't have an explicit in and out time. You need the staff to be present for X number of hours in the day and clock the time, right? So you would have somebody maybe logging in at 6, completing their 6-hour shift. Somebody might be coming in at 7, somebody might be coming in at 10. The idea is to understand if they have clocked the designated shift hours or not. So now we'll look at how the configuration is done. So under the settings page, within attendance setting, you would first go to shift setting. Here you can add shift, and so let's say you start with fixed shift, right? You select the category and you give it some name. You would mention the starting time as well as the end time, and you would also mention how long is your break hours. Just to make a note here, so this is required if your break is unpaid. So essentially you see that in this shift I have defined 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. which is 12 hours. Since I have selected unpaid break hour as 1 hour, the net payable hour shown here is 11 hours. And now you can select a list of staffs for whom this shift applies, and you can save it. Next, we'll look at how to configure rotational shifts. So fairly similar, you give a shift name, right? And as there are multiple shifts associated with a rotational shift, you would have to define the same things. You would have to call what, let's say the first shift is called. Here I'm naming it as shift 1. And you have to mention the start time and the end time. Similar to a fixed shift, you would also have to mention the unpaid break hours if it applies. And likewise, you have to define the other shift. So here I have defined 2 shifts. If you have shorter shift hours and more than one, you can also add another shift here, right? Now, just to make a small note here, that if you want your employees to mark 2 presence in one day, which is 2P, if there are 2 shifts, or if you want somebody to work 3 shifts and be able to mark their attendance, you have to enable this for your for marking 3p 2p and 3p. So once you enable this, both your lengths and normal flows both will work. Like fixed shift, you can assign your next set of employees for whom this applies, and you can save it. The third category is the open shift. As you would understand that it doesn't require a start and an end time. It needs the number of work hours to be clocked. So you name the shift and you just give the number of hours, and that's it. So here again, the concept of a paid or unpaid break, actually doesn't work, because even if somebody has gone for, let's say, 2 hours of break, end of the day, if they have not clocked these 8 hours, right, they would not be marked 8 hours. So, and if you have some policy around early exit, and fines around them, all of that will be applicable, right? So we do not define break hours here. We just define the work hours, and just like any other shift, you would now assign the staffs for whom this applies, and you would save it. So here in the shift setting page, you would see a summary of all the shifts you have configured, what are the shift timings, how many people they are assigned to, and so on. This is like a summary view. Okay. Just to summarize, we have fixed shift where you need to mention a start and an end time, and you have to mention the unpaid break hours if it applies. For rotational shift, you have to do it multiple times, as many shifts are there in your business. For open shift, you don't need a start and an end time. You just specify the number of hours, and again, break hours, like I said, is not applicable. Just to give you a small note here, that some of you have requested that we have designated break hours, like between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. This is not configurable on our system yet, but this will be available soon. Next, we will look at the policies around overtime and fines. So there are 4 categories, right? You have a late entry, early exit, and you have excess break and overtime, right? So right after shift setting, you go to automation rules. Why automation? Because these calculations are automated based on your configuration, right? So you set the rules for all these categories, right? And you just have to approve fine and overtime entries going forward, but all the calculations will be automated. Right, so here I am configuring that the grace period for late entry is 15 minutes. I'll explain how it works, but right now we'll just look at the configurations. And you can select like all applicable to all stuffs, or you can assign it to specific ones, right? And then you can assign it to specific people if you want, or assign to all, and enable rule. Similarly, you can do the same for early exit. And excess break hours. It's fairly straightforward. You just have to give the time and who you want to assign to. If you want to do it all, you just move this, or you apply to specific people as per your choice. So this is all about the configuration. Just to make a small note here, early OT is still not configurable on our system, but again it will be available very soon. So how will all these settings apply, on the staff application? So for those of you who have been part of the system would know that we have one Android based application which staffs can sort of access, right? And then we have the web application, which is more for the administration side of it. And we have the Lens application, which is again for facial recognition and attendance, right? So to talk about the experience, let me start with how will staffs see this, right? So on the home screen, they will get the option to punch in. If, so once you click punch in, the day starts. If your break automation is configured, then going forward, you will find two options, which is start break and punch out. And yeah, if you have clicked on start break, you would get the next you would get the option of end break. And of course, after that, you will get a punch out option. If the attendance marking is on Lens, then for fixed and rotational shift, it's a normal marking, right? You show your face and you would get a green screen saying that attendance marked at so and so time. So this is for fixed shift and rotational shift. Because as a system, we have the reference that what is the start of the shift, what is the end of the shift, right? So based on this time, we can do all the other calculations. Now, when it comes to open shift, right, we don't have a time reference. We need to calculate the in and out, right? So once you have shown your face, you would get these two options. As a staff, you can either click punch in or punch out. So the first punch will only allow a punch in, first punch in the day, and then after that, both you can do punch out, punch in as applicable. If your break automation is configured, then you would get four options: punch in, punch out, start break, end break. Again, the first punch of the day will only allow a punch in. So this is the experience on Lens. Now, on this slide, I would like to have your complete attention, because here I will explain the basics of how the calculations work on the PagarBook platform with all the automations in place, right? The first point here is all fines OTs are calculated on gross pay and not CTC. So for example, if you have a staff whose name is Ramesh and his gross pay is 15,000, right? Whatever be the CTC after bonus, etc., you're not worried about that. Just the gross pay is 15,000, and you have a salary cycle of 28 days. So for example, if you have a month-wise salary cycle and you're in February, you have 28 days. So the wage rate per shift then stands at 15,000, which is the gross pay, divided by 28, which is 535.71. This is the first step. The second step is all per hour rates are calculated based on the current shift length where the employee is working. To give you an example, let's say Ramesh is allowed to work in 2 shifts rotationally, where shift A is 10 hours long and shift B is 9 hours long, right? So for shift A, when the fine and the OT is calculated, we will take the per shift wage rate, which came to 535.71 here. We will divide it by 10 because the shift A is 10 hours long. And this is the net payable hours, by the way. So your per hour rate comes to 53.57. Now, if Ramesh works 1 hour 10 minutes extra, we will convert this per hour rate into minutes, which is divided by 60, and multiply it with 70, which is the total extra minutes worked. Now here it comes to 62.49. Now the same person, if worked 1 hour 10 minute extra OT in shift B, which is 9 hours long, right, the calculation would be slightly different. So we'll take the per shift wage rate, which is 535 we calculated here on gross pay. We'll divide it by 9 because the current shift is 9 hours. So my per hour wage rate is 59.52. Again, if the staff work for 1 hour 10 minutes extra, we would divide this per hour wage rate into minutes, which is by 60, and multiply it with the minutes additionally worked. It comes to 69.44, slightly different from the shift A, right? The third important point here is that all fines, OTs, are on a per minute basis and excludes the grace period you have configured, right? So let's say if you have configured 30 minutes as your grace period for late entry, till the 30th minute, no fines will be charged. But on the 31st minute, fine will be charged for all the 31 minutes. So just to summarize, your OT and fine is calculated on gross pay. The per hour rates are calculated on the current shift length, and everything is calculated on a per minute basis, excluding the grace period. We'll take an example and look at how fixed shift would work, right? So let's say you have configured a shift between 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. and you have an unpaid break hour of 1 hour. So your net payable shift is 6 hours. And let us assume that you have configured 15 minutes as grace period for all the automation rules. Now let's say an employee punches in at 7:10 a.m., which is 10 minutes later than the start time of the shift. To remind you, you have a grace period of 15 minutes. So essentially no fines would be charged. Now this employee starts the break at 12 noon, comes back at 1 p.m., which is exactly the number of hours you have configured for unpaid break, and then punches out at 2:35 p.m. So before the break, the employee worked for 4 hours 50 minutes. After the break, he has worked for 1 hour 35 minutes. In total logged worked hours is 6 hours 25 minutes. Is there a late entry fine? No, because your grace period was 15 minutes and the employee entered within 10 minutes. So no fines. Excess break? No, because the employee has been good. He has come back within the stipulated hours. Early exit? No, your exit time was 2 p.m. Your staff has left at 2:35, right? So no early exit. Is there overtime? Yes. Your exit time was 2 p.m. The grace period was 15 minutes. So if the staff had left any time between 2 and 2:15, there would be no OT. However, since he has left after 35 minutes, he would get overtime for all the 35 minutes. A rotational shift would essentially work in a very similar way, just that there are certain nuances when it comes to a person assigned to multiple shifts. We'll have a look at that. So how multiple shifts work. To start with, yes, this works only for rotational shift, right? Not for fixed, not for open. And Your multiple shift could be a continuous or a non-continuous shift. So when I say continuous, it means the end time of your first shift is equal to the start time of your second shift. As in this case, you have 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. as shift 1, and then you have 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. as the second shift. Non-continuous would mean that there is a reasonable gap between the two shifts, as in this case demonstrated here. You start at 8 a.m., end at 12 noon for the first shift, and the second shift is between 4 p.m. and 10 p.m. Now, as a system, we have configured a buffer zone of plus minus 1 hour. If somebody wants to get 2 Ps, right, for attending both the shifts, that person would need to punch at least twice in this buffer zone. One would signify the punch out of shift 1, and the other would signify the punch out of shift 2. Punch in of shift 2, right? Now, how do we understand that now that you have punched in for a second time, is this for working overtime of the first shift, or you have started the second shift? So for that, your next punch for punch out should be at least after the mid time of shift 2. Okay, so just to summarize here, for condition of 2P, you need at least 2 punch in the buffer zone, right? One would signify a punch out of the shift 1, second would signify a punch in of shift 2, right? And there needs to be at least 1 punch after the mid time of second shift. Why I am saying at least? So somebody might go on a break, right? So somebody might go on a break here, come back here, right? So essentially, when we look at the last punch of the day, that should come at least after the mid time of shift 2 for us to signify, hey, this is the punch out for the second shift and not a overtime, right? So yeah, so at least 1 punch after the second shift mid time, else it will be considered OT for first shift, but up to 6 hours, not more than that. I hope I'm clear here. Now, for non-continuous shifts, again, the concept is very similar. There is a buffer zone. So here the buffer zone for second shift would start at 3 p.m. and this is the mid time of shift 2. So for 2 Ps, you need at least 1 punch after the start of shift 2's buffer zone. So from 3 p.m. onward, there should be at least 1 punch that would signify a punch in for the second shift. And similarly, there should be at least 1 punch after the mid time. So doesn't matter like here if you have in between taken a break, punched out, punched in again, right? But there should be 1 punch out after the mid time. So at least 1 punch after the second shift mid time, else it is considered OT for first shift up to 6 hours. Moving on, we'll look at how open shifts work. So let's say you have configured work hours as 7 and a break period of 30 minutes and all grace periods of 15 minutes. Now, user sometime in the day, let's say 7 a.m., somebody has punched in, starts break at 12 noon, ends break at 1 p.m. and punches out at 2:45. So here the person has worked for 5 hours. After break, he has worked for 1 hour 45 minutes. So total work hours log 6 hours 45 minutes, no fines. Why no fines? Because you have configured all the grace period as 15 minutes, right? So since the user has punched out 245 or after that, right, charge no fines. We'll see a second case where everything else remains same, but the user has punched out at 244, 1 minute more than the stipulated grace period. So here the staff will be charged a fine for all the 60 minutes. Now just to make a point here, on our system, any shift that you configured has a maximum capping of 16 hours. So no shift can be more than 16 hours. In case of open shift, right, if you look at the last possible time when somebody can punch in for the day, assume it is, let's say, 11:59, right, and your shift hours is 16 minutes. So till the next day 4 p.m, right, which is 12 plus 4, 16 hours, we would allow the punch out for the previous day. Right? This is a very corner case where if somebody is marking their attendance of a 16 hours shift but has started the day at 11:59, right before midnight. So even for that, we would allow that person to clock in 16 hours. So till next day 4 p.m, the employee is allowed to punch out. Here, I would take this opportunity to sort of give you a peek into what's the roadmap ahead in terms of automation. Right? We have listened to a lot of feedbacks that came from our existing users or prospect users that, in our company, whatever automation rules you have that you can configure on PagarBook, we have rules which do not fit in. So we have extended these automation rules for fines and overtime. And in the roadmap ahead, what you will be able to do are these. So first of all, for calculating fines, you would have a range-based system. Okay, so if you want that for the first 5 minutes, there would be no fines. From 6 to 10 minutes, you want to have, a fine, let's say, at certain rate. Then after 10 minutes, you want to have a certain rate, and so on. So you can curate those ranges. You can configure that, okay, after X minutes, it will be directly marked as a half day. So after 30 minutes, if you appear, right, it will be directly marked as a half day. Or after 1 hour, let's say, you'll be marked absent. It doesn't matter you work for the rest of the day, but you have come 1 hour late, so you are marked absent. So all these configurations would be possible. And you can also make a combination of these, right? So if you want that, okay, for the first 10 minutes, I'd have, X amount charged. Then 10 to 20 minutes, I have another amount charged. But then after that, I want to mark half day, right? So you can have these combinations. You can also set occurrences, right? So essentially, like if you have a policy like, I allow, let's say 15 minutes of grace period every day, but in a week, if it is more than 3 times, there is a implication for that, right? You want to charge something. So you can set occurrences and counts and time. And like I said, you can combine all these categories. And to give you further flexibility, right? If you want to curate a set of rules for a particular group of staffs, and another rule for another group of staffs, that too will be possible. On the overtime side, yes, your early OT calculation, like I said, that currently it's not there. We will cover that. And in a lot of cases, you have certain multipliers associated with OT, right? You want to configure, certain X of the salary or a fixed amount, right? Or a percentage of your, let's say, gross pay or something, right? So you can do all that and also assign these rates in bulk. If you have, fairly larger size of staffs, it's difficult to go through one by one at a time. We understand that, and we have allowed that bulk assigning action. Yes, so that's it from our side today. We will open this session for Q&A, but just before that, I would like to mention 3 points. I have covered this session in English. I understand some of you might want assistance in other languages. Feel free to contact at this number, which is 080471-85100. Our team will be glad to help you with any language support you want, and we can explain all of this in your preferred language. Right? The other 2 things that I want to mention is there would be 2 links, with this video. The first one, if you are an unpaid user and you want to convert into a paid user, you can reach out via that form. We'll be glad to reach out to you and assist you to move into a paid plan. And there's a second form. So all those who are attending, right, I have talked about certain use cases that we cover, certain use cases that we'll be covering in future. Beyond this, I'm sure there could be certain use cases that we still do not cover on our platform. We would really like to hear your feedback on them, understand your use cases, and in the period ahead, we would like to build that for you. Now, if it is any different kind of shifts you want to follow, right, please reach out to us, let us know. If there are different kinds of automation rules that our current product or the future roadmap does not cover, feel free to reach out. Share your details. We will reach out and we will take those notes. Thank you all. Thank you all for attending. Okay, so for the Q&A session, I'll have with me Manthan, who's my colleague. We'll try to take the different questions that you have asked. So Manthan, please join me in.
Thanks, Anand.
Yeah. So the first question is from Sirajuddin. He says that how to set different grace period for different shifts. Would you take that?
Yes. So Sirajuddin, so I would like to have some more clarity. Like, can you have what kind of feature you want exactly, like shift wise? So do you need that all the same shift should be tagged with the same automation rules, or you mean to say like in rotational shift, both shifts should have different grace period?
Not sure if he's live, but
okay. Yeah, this is fixed shift.
This is fixed shift.
Okay, so in case of fixed shift, yes, so we are moving ahead with the automation rules in the next week, and there you will be able to find the shift wise setting, so your problem will be solved in the few couple of weeks. Yeah.
So like I said in the roadmap ahead that I showed you, right, we are covering this use case which Shiraj raised. Okay. We have two questions from Akhilesh. So the first question was, can I set different business with different rules? And there was a second one which said that if I can show different data to different person in my employee base, right? So both these, Akhilesh, we would be covering it, but you can expect it uh, roughly around middle of this year when these options will be available, right? You'll be able to configure this. Will allow that. Okay. Right now it's not in the product, but yeah, will be there by May or June. Okay. The fourth question came from I don't know if this is the correct name, but the handle said Kadal Rain. Automatic half day marking. You want to take that, Mantan?
Yes, so basically currently our software takes all the lens automations as a present, and there are so much of demand where users ask like we want a half day where shift is 8 hours, and if staff is coming for 4 hours or less than that, then staff should be marked as half day. So definitely, as I told you, like again, it will be solved in automation next version. So it will be again solved in couple of weeks. Yes.
Okay. I think there is a question from Iftikhar. Yeah, he says that can we pay more than 5 lakhs in bulk payment? So yes,
Currently, we have a limit of 5 lakh.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, so just to answer that in detail, like there are a lot of regulations that are coming into place where, as you would understand, our payments are handled by external parties, right? So we don't want your money to get stuck, but it sometimes happened with the payment processors, right? So that's why we have set a limit of 5 lakhs. Once these issues are resolved and we are fairly confident that you won't have your payment stuck, at least let's say 90% of the cases, we will increase that range as well. But again, I would ask Iftikhar, you can please call us at the helpline. We can have a further discussion on this, on your use case, and figure out how we can solve this for you. Okay. Next one, Kanishka, you have asked to explain early OT. So like I said, that early OT is not available on the product yet, but we are working on it. It will be available soon. It will just work like, like a early exit or a late entry. So whatever rule you set up, you want to give them overtime for, let's say, 2 hours of early entry, you can do that. If you want to have like grace period that, okay, my shift starts at 8, so anybody coming after 7:45 doesn't get anything, right? So you can configure that. That will be available soon. Next we have Mr. Abhishek Basu. Need roster approval setting for shift that runs 24/7. Sir, this is slightly a longer use case. I would request you to sort of fill in that form with regards to shift that I spoke about. We would really like to get in touch with you and understand this in detail, to take this forward. Still app not supporting iOS. Yes, there has been, certain delay from our side with iOS updates. We acknowledge this. We are working on this. This is deprioritized slightly because majority of our users are on the Android and web ecosystem. But we understand, sir, that if you have paid, using iOS, so we should cater to this, and we are working on it. We would apologize for being slightly delayed on that part, but we are taking it off. Okay.
And we will catch the pace with Android.
Yeah. Please allow. So this is from Ayub Khan. Please allow manager daily work base entry. You want to answer that?
Yes. So as the current feature, so it is not allowed for manager, but we will look into it because the certain data what it suggests that currently manager mostly they don't want to, and it is allowed through staff, right? So let's see, let's figure out if possible. Then we will surely work on this. Yeah.
Mr. Suresh says, can we get an employee how many days late in a month other than fine? Sir, like I said, it's part of the roadmap ahead. In the next set of automation rules, you will be able to sort of set this, that if a person is late for X number of days, and if there is an occurrence of late behavior associated with a staff, you can create additional rules on top of that. And if it is just about the report you are talking about, that how many times a person has been late a month, that is already available.
No, it will be.
Sure, we'll take that as a feedback, so we will work on it. Okay. Next is Ms. Mamta Pera. When will you increase the online payment limit? Ma'am, I would request you to give us a call at the helpline. We can understand your use case better and take a call. But like I reiterated earlier, that we don't want bulk payments to get stuck. So unless we are fairly certain, we are at that stage where issues don't take time, money doesn't get stuck, we will increase the limit. But please give us a call. We'll work on that.
The next question again from Mamta Vera. So you require a feature of auto absent, and that is again in the roadmap. So we will be definitely going live with this feature in around 3 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to add to that, all the roadmaps that I had spoken about on the presentation, they will be live in another week or week and a half. Next one is from Shailaja. Late punch-in the morning shift is showing in next shift. How to adjust? Ma'am, this can be a fairly longer explanation. So we would need to look at the log entries. Please reach out to us on the helpline. We will assist you thereon. We need to have a look at the logs to be able to answer this. We have no option for in PagarBook for incentives. Ma'am, what kind of incentives? Again, if you can give us a detailed feedback, it will be helpful for us to answer this. Okay. Next one is Golek Malik. Hi, we have an open shift of 9 hours, but there is a policy of our company. We want if any employee come to the office after 12 p.m., then you will get attendance of half day for that day. You want to answer this?
Yes. So again, it is a part and parcel of automation rules which will be live and next couple of weeks, as I said. So your problem is definitely gonna solve by this. So in case of OpenShift, if staff is coming after 12, you will be automatically through app, it will be marked as half day.
Okay. Next question again from Mr. Akhilesh. I'm facing in and out time issues in case of some employees. Sometimes in place of AM count PM, and in case of PM shows AM for the same duty hours. Sir, it might be a bug. We again need to look at logs for these kind of issues. So please reach out on our helpline. We will assist you. Hi PK team. Again, Mr. Golek Malik. Hi PK team. We have open shift of 9 hours. Oh, I think Manthan has
Yes,
already
we already
answered
answered that.
Sorry, excuse me. this is answered. Yes. Okay. I think we have sort of tried to address most of the questions, right? To some of you, I have told you that you need to reach out to the helpline, because those cases we need to look at the logs. So please reach out and we'll look at it. Okay, we have one last question from Mr. Iftikhar Hussain. Is there any report where we can find when the salary is increased or decreased by employer or admin? Yes, sir. This feature is like, this report is not there, but this is again on our roadmap. But it's not related to shift. But yeah, we will be addressing this. If you want to have some suggestion around this feature, please give us a call. So me and Manthan, we are part of the product and tech team. So we will talk to you and figure out what exactly is your use case, and we can align our roadmap accordingly. Sure. I think that's it for the day. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining. I see almost 75 to 80% of the people who had joined stayed with us till the end. We are really, really fortunate to have you. Thank you. Look forward to connecting again on another session.